So to go back to the first thing that I saw at city council here was people saying they don't feel safe.
Mhm.
I see this problem going on and it's impacting me. And you're right. So you're right. There's a lot of different causes for a homeless. And right now it seems like affordable housing is a buzzword that
Mhm.
we're using to kind of say we're working on this problem of homelessness, but that's not the problem that people are seeing. They're
Mhm.
the economic problems. So you're talking economies. Do you have any knowledge of what's the difference between um, somebody who's down on their luck and they need a job, but they're not an addict? And there's a lot of economic problems going on and wages not keeping up and all of that. But setting that aside, I'm not. It seems like the conversation goes hand in hand with not homeless so much as homeless addictions and needles
Mhm.
showing up,
Mhm.
and I don't feel safe.
Right. Well, someone down on their luck isn't going to be down on their luck permanently, right? So, I mean, I don't know the stats on it, but running across people um, at the Denver Rescue Mission
Mhm.
and Christ Bodies, my wife worked or volunteered with them quite a bit. Being a dietitian, she did some of that stuff.
Mm.
Helped them meal planning. Is the people that are down on their luck? I would go volunteer about once a month, right? More or less. You might see them 2 months in a row, but you wouldn't see them a 3rd month.
Is that right?
Yeah. But most of the people you saw every single month. You got to know 'em. These are not people that are down on the luck. People that are down on the luck get out of that situation pretty quick because it's not fun.
Mhm.
And again, if you're down on your luck and you have people and you get a job and it's like, hey, I need a place to stay, people will help you, right? Um, and we should help people that are down on their luck. And we should at least make sure people are fed who are drug addicted homeless, right? Just like the Denver Rescue Mission does, Christ Body does that. There's a lot of charities that do that. But charities are already doing that to make sure that they are at least fed, right? So we don't need to then compound the issue by adding in, oh, by the way, here's a crack pipe, here is a needle, or here's a meth pipe. You don't need to compound that issue. Those charities don't do that, and they run successful programs. The New York Post article indicated that was critical. I don't have it here. Indicated that their success rate of getting people off drugs was 1% or less.
1%.
1% or less. So you're not addressing the root cause. What you have found are people that are internally wanting to make that change and have the fortitude to make that change.
Mhm.
And yes, you are providing them services and stuff to help them get that way. But these programs themselves actually disincentivize that because it makes it easier to use the drugs. So they've got to have something else. I ran across a guy at the Denver Mission, a younger guy. He's getting his life back in order. He told us his story. He goes, he was limping. I was like, why is this guy limping? Young, healthy guy, football player type. He goes, I was addicted to drugs and a little girlfriend, and it got so bad I attempted to commit suicide. Took a 9 millimeter to his stomach. That's why he's limping.
Mhm.
He goes,
Tragic.
I'm off drugs now, and I'm working here 16 hours a day, and I will do it till the day I die if I have to get to see my daughter.
Yeah.
That is redemption. That is solving the problem. That the if he was giving needles all the time and he would say, "Oh, it's okay to consume it," that may not have happened. But his daughter is what pulled him out of it. That's a heartwarming story.
Right. Yeah. That is great. And it's seem and I don't have stories like that. I have too had volunteered some time, but um that seems to be a reoccurring theme that you're saying you find whatever reason for it.
Mhm.
And you can have little reasons like Joe Camel, or you can have reasons like like that just bring you back from the edge, but there's got to be some reason for it. And for either way, and
Well,
what
if we're going to spend taxpayers' money
I was just going to say,
to do needles,
what do you think about taxpayer money for
then
this?
why don't we pay, tobacco companies, Joe Camel, money to advertise if
It,
they're both harmless or if they're harm reduction?
one of the things that bothers me about it is the taxpayer money, and it's not often up for public vote. You can kind of sometimes you can say sometimes it's not even on the agenda sometimes. It's just it's a bureaucratic function, or if you get a grant for it. I mean, some of those things don't have to go through that public forum.
And
You
doesn't
just
that tell you something? Doesn't that tell you something? That itself, that if it were to go through the public system, and get comments, would get shot down quickly. So it doesn't go through that system in order for it to pass. That should tell you, that itself, that one data point should tell you something about these systems, about these injection sites.
It certainly makes me suspicious about it. Yeah.
They always talk about making deals in the smoky back rooms.
Right.
That's what it seems like to me.
Well, how about what do you think about um, some of it? They just say it can't go wrong, right? I'm just getting a grant. It's not like um, it's free money. You can't turn down free money if it's reducing any harm. Then any dollar spent, and if it's not causing any harm, then just do it. So,
Well, how about this? Let me just get a grant to install a nuclear reactor in Lakewood. Hey, it can't cause any harm. It's free money. It's because it's not reducing harm. That is the whole point. If it was reducing harm, then again, you've got your Nobel Prize in economics, right?
well,
there you go. You just did it. So it can't reduce harm by any stretch of the means.
I just
So why would I go for a grant, even for free money, to increase harm in my community?
I don't know. And I know a lot of the grants, they say it's grants and free money, but it's matching
taxpayer money.
funds.
It's taxpayer
Most
money.
of
We're
them.
paying for it still.
You're paying for it.
It just goes to the federal and it comes back.
That's
But
right.
but that money shouldn't even be a fair, right? Because
Right.
first of all, it's you're getting a grant to do an illegal activity,
Well,
right?
they're
Or
making
sort
it
of,
legal by this, right?
right? Well, I mean,
This part is not, like the drug part is not. The
Right.
needle part is not.
well, but the needle part
Illegal.
isn't illegal. But there are certain situations. Let's take RICO, for example,
Okay.
right? RICO, it's
Yeah.
racketeering.
Yeah.
Just because I'm not if I am handing out needles, right? Even though I don't have any intention for it to be used illegally, but I know that my staff are letting it be used illegally. Like, am I in trouble? Like, if I have a fleet of cars
Okay.
and I have staff that loan the cars out to bank robbers, and I know about it,
Okay.
and I know that's what they're going to use my cars for,
Yeah.
and they go rob banks,
Then they
I'm
get you.
I'm also liable through RICO,
That's true. Okay.
right? So wait a minute, let's put a pause button there. If you think that this should be RICO, this should put any public official that says, "Yeah, let's do this." Wait a minute, that's an illegal activity, and that's the whole purpose of the facility is to do that. So if you have that happening, well, that's an illegal activity that's happening, and it's happening there, and you're funding it, and you're causing it to happen.
I would love to argue with you about this, but I don't know how. So, and I couldn't find anybody to do the other side. Here's what they just keep coming back to is what I hear is, but they can't help it. Or, but these are low level crimes. I mean, it's just a little bit of possession, or it's just a little bit of loitering. It's just a little bit of camping on sidewalks. These are all just
a little bit of
bits.
sign.
It's just
So
low level.
Well, here's the problem. These people don't have jobs, generally speaking. They don't have an income, generally speaking. So how do you get money to pay for your drugs? You tell me. So if you're a woman, guess what comes up, right? The oldest profession.
Then you have other problems.
Then you have that happening. So then what happens then is now you get a whole slew of things going on there. What about if you're a guy? Well, you don't have that option. These are unsavory things. So you're going to have to steal. You might get violent. That's reported in this Alberta study.
And there will be competing studies to
Oh,
show
yeah, you can have a study to show anything.
there is absolutely no crime increase
Right.
around these drugs.
And that's what people would say.
Yeah.
This says otherwise.
Okay.
Now, of course, it's
So
one
why do
study
you like that study versus all these others that say there's no correlation?
because it makes sense.
How so?
Okay, so I love science. I'm a scientist. I'm an engineer, I'm a computer scientist, all of that. I love science, but I question scientists.
Mhm.
When a scientist comes up with something that doesn't make sense, like peanut butter causes you to lose your hair, right? There's all these things. It's like, okay, you got to figure out something. This study
Mhm.
provides data for what all the people anecdotally have been telling me live by these sites, and people who are drug users or recovering drug users tell me. So I go, okay, wait a minute. So let's start looking at the data.
Mhm.
The report also indicates that some of the staff were drug dealers. If I was a drug dealer, man, that would be an awesome place to work.
That seems unbelievable.
Uh, that's what is reported. But think of the incentives. Just look at simply incentives.
How so?
I get paid by the government to also make money on the black market selling my drugs.
Hmm.
I get paid twice for the same hours of work. I do that all day long. Now, here's the next thing. What if there's organized crime associated with it? You get all your people in those facilities, government gives you money, or better, you set up a nonprofit,
Right.
right? And
There's
I
a
know
lot
I'm
of
getting more,
nonprofits.
this is very hypothetical,
Sure.
but let's talk about just incentives. And I'm just talking about incentives. If I was a crime boss and I was already distributing these drugs, I already know that the cops are going to have to back off. The government's going to give me money to run this thing.
Mhm.
I'm going to make money selling my drugs, my product to the consumers, and I'm going to make sure that they don't OD, or at least the best of my ability. So I'm going to continue to have clientele. I'm going to continue to have money coming in from the government. That's going to make sure that they're okay, and I'm going to make money on the black market. That that actually strikes me as a pretty tempting thing if I was a kingpin.
It would be very tempting if you could do all that, yeah. But we have already identified there's a large population of compassionate people who are working there. So this is, um, there may be a case for that situation, but it's obviously not
It's hypothetical.
everybody
It's
in hypothetical. But so I guess to come back to if you wanted to solve a problem, this is a huge.
It's a huge problem.
There's a lot of problems here, but if I was looking at a problem to solve, and again, I have people walking down the street and I'm finding needles, do I look at this, do you think, as a drug problem, as a homeless problem? How can I separate them out?
Well, again, people are down on their luck who are homeless usually don't stay that way. So to stay homeless seems like there has to be another variable involved to keep that as a perpetual situation. So I would say this is probably more of a drug problem, right? And then ultimately, you could say it's a mental health problem. I agree. Addiction is a mental health problem.
Mhm.
Do these people have mental health problems that went to drugs, or did the drugs bring on mental health issues? So
Yeah.
it's really, I would say it's, and it may be the chicken and egg, because I think you probably find cases of both, where people get addicted to drugs,
Mhm.
then their life goes downhill, and all they want is their next hit, and then you have some people that can't deal with some sort of a trauma that they've been dealt, and they turn to the bottle, turn to alcohol to regulate, self-regulate, right, and medicate, and then that ends up turning into it. So I think that's really what it is. It's a drug and mental health problem wrapped up in one. The problem has as many facets as there are people, right?
There's a lot.
Everyone has an individual story.
That's true, and that's why it's a big problem. But it seems to me like one way to solve a big problem full of lots of individual situations we can't fix everybody's, and
Correct.
a government cannot fix
Nope.
every individual situation. That's why it seems more important to have a framework of laws that everybody agrees to. Maybe one framework is, yeah, we're not saying, and Colorado says this over and over again, in votes, drug use, maybe we want it. We
Mhm.
legalized pot, we legalized up the hallucinogenics, we legalized things, but that's different from doing it open air on the streets and leaving trash laying around that could cause health effects to other people. So is that the
Mhm.
solution where you just set up that framework
It
and
is,
people stray,
well,
you enforce?
yeah, I mean, it's a cultural thing, right? So
Okay.
like you're saying laws, but I'm saying like laws and culture, right? What's acceptable, what's not. There's plenty of things that are not acceptable that are perfectly legal. Um,
Like what?
uh, let's just take unethical business practices, right? There are people
Okay.
that get away with things that are
Yeah.
probably pretty unethical, right? But not necessarily illegal.
Okay.
Um, Likewise, you can have some things that are, ethical, but not necessarily legal too. Let's talk about censorship. I'll leave it there. You know, and people can say, well, that's legal, but it's not to do that. I would be someone that kind of falls into that camp within certain things, but that's another story for another time. So it's a cultural and legal situation. All of it should gel together. And I would make the argument that is the only way to solve the problem. You cannot solve it by trying to do this. You can't do it by promoting it. You
Hmm.
can't do it um, by turning a blind eye to it.
Well, I think that pretty much sums up the conversation. And if we're getting into other topics, I think we're probably
Yeah,
done.
probably not. Yes.
So, well, I appreciate your point of view on this. We'll keep talking, and maybe we can find some other um, back and forth things to do, because I think it's an important conversation to have, and you bring up a lot of good points, things that I think the community we should be thinking about and talking about, rather than, like you said before, having the backroom deals and things going on before you know it. I mean, these are things happening right here in Jefferson County. We need to make sure we know.
And we need to be informed about it.
We
And
need to
I
be.
would love to have a back and forth. I'd love to have, someone that supports these to come in and we can have a good, that's the only way we can understand each other. That's the only way we can have uh, an understanding of the truth. Could these be good? Could these be a net benefit to society? I'm open to the idea. I just don't see it.
Well, we'll figure it out. Thank you so much.
Thanks.